Isaac Blackwood was sitting alone in the dark of his cold house on Christmas Eve, letting the fire burn down to nothing on purpose, when the knock came at the door. Isaac Blackwood was 40 years old, and Isaac had not celebrated Christmas in 3 years, and Isaac had every intention of not celebrating it that year either. Isaac had let the fire die because a cold, dark house suited the day. Isaac had not lit a candle. Isaac had not cooked a meal. Isaac had meant to sit in the dark until Christmas Eve was over, and it was safe to be a person again, the way he had done the 2 Christmas Eves before this one. And then, over the howl of the blizzard that had been building all afternoon, there came a knock at Isaac Blackwood's door, small, frantic. The knock of someone who has been out in a killing storm too long and has found the only light on a dark mountain, even a light as faint as the last of Isaac's dying fire. Isaac opened the door, and there on his step, in the screaming white of the worst blizzard of the year, stood 3 little girls and a woman, all 4 of them near frozen, snow caked to their coats. The smallest child so cold she had stopped shivering, which anyone who knows winter knows is the dangerous sign. The woman had her arms around all 3 girls at once, trying to shield them with her own body, and the woman looked up at Isaac Blackwood with a face gone grey from cold and said, "Please, please, sir, the children. We are lost and the little one is failing. I am not asking for myself. Please, just the children, just until the storm breaks." And the smallest girl, the one who had stopped shivering, looked up at Isaac Blackwood from inside the woman's arms, and in a tiny voice, a voice with almost no strength left in it, the little girl asked the question that broke 3 years of ice in a single stroke. The little girl asked, "Are you Santa Claus?" "Mama said if we found a house, maybe Santa lived there." I want you to understand what those words did to Isaac Blackwood, standing in his doorway on Christmas Eve. Because 3 years before, on a Christmas Eve exactly like this one, in a storm exactly like this one, Isaac Blackwood had lost everything he loved. And Isaac had frozen himself solid against the world ever since, and had sworn off Christmas as the cruelest day of the year, and had meant to sit in the dark and let this one pass like the others. And now the storm had brought to his door the very thing that had once been taken from him, a freezing child on Christmas Eve. A child who might not last the night, a child he could still save. Isaac Blackwood did not answer the little girl's question. Isaac Blackwood reached out and took all 3 children into his arms at once, and pulled the woman in after them, and shut the blizzard out behind them, and said the first warm words he had said in 3 years. "Get them by the fire. I'll build it up. Nobody's failing in my house tonight." And with those words, without quite knowing he was doing it, Isaac Blackwood began, after 3 frozen years, to thaw. Remember the little girl's question at the door. We will come back to it, on Christmas morning, when Isaac finally has an answer. To understand why a knock on Christmas Eve nearly brought Isaac Blackwood to his knees, you have to know what happened 3 Christmases before. So let me tell you, gently, because it is a hard thing. Isaac Blackwood had once had a family, a wife named Mary, whom he had loved since they were young, and a daughter named Lily, who had been 6 years old, and who had been, by every account, the light of that house. Isaac and Mary and little Lily had lived on the ranch in the high country, and they had been happy, in the ordinary way that is only recognized as happiness after it is gone. 3 years before this story, on Christmas Eve, Mary had taken little Lily into town to fetch a few last things for Christmas morning. Isaac had meant to go with them, but there was stock to see to, and a fence gone down, and Isaac had said, "Go on without me. I will have it all done by the time you are back, and we will have our Christmas." Those were the last ordinary words Isaac ever said to them. Go on without me. A storm came up while Mary and Lily were in town, the way storms come up in that high country, fast and without mercy. Mary tried to get home before the worst of it, because it was Christmas Eve, and little Lily was waiting to hang her stocking. And Mary and Lily did not make it home. Their wagon went off the road at the creek crossing in the blinding snow, into the cold water, and by the time Isaac went looking, frantic, in the storm, it was far too late. Isaac Blackwood found his whole family that Christmas Eve, and lost them the same night, and every Christmas Eve since had been the anniversary of the worst hours of his life. So Isaac had frozen himself. That is the only way to say it. Isaac had blamed himself, the go on without me echoing in him every day, and Isaac had shut the door on the world. He kept the ranch running because a man has to do something with his hands, but Isaac let no one close, and Isaac marked no holidays, and Isaac hated Christmas above all, with a cold, hard hatred, because Christmas was the day the storm took Mary and Lily, and Christmas was the day Isaac had said, "Go on without me." 3 years Isaac had sat alone in the dark on Christmas Eve. This was to have been the 4th. Remember the creek crossing, and the storm, and go on without me. It all comes back before we are through. Now let me tell you about the woman at the door, because she was carrying a heavy load of her own, and 2 people carrying heavy loads sometimes find they can share the weight. Her name was Abigail Finch. Abigail was 30 years old, and Abigail was a widow, and the 3 little girls were not her own. They were her sisters. Abigail's sister Ruth had died that autumn, of a fever, and Ruth's husband had died the year before, and so Ruth's 3 girls, Hattie, who was 11, and Junie, who was 8, and little Bess, who was 5, had been left orphans, with no one in the world but their Aunt Abigail. Abigail Finch had taken the 3 girls without a moment's hesitation, because that is the kind of woman Abigail was. But Abigail was a poor widow with no means to keep 4 mouths through a mountain winter. And so Abigail had made the hard choice to bring the girls across the mountains to their only other living relative, an elderly great-aunt near Silverton, who had written that she could take the children in and give them a home. Abigail had not wanted to give the girls up, but Abigail had wanted them fed and warm and safe more than she had wanted to keep them, which is the truest kind of love there is, the kind that puts the child's good above your own heart's wish. They had set out to reach the great-aunt before Christmas, so the girls would not spend the holiday on the road. And the same mountain, the same high country, the same merciless weather that had taken Isaac's family 3 years before, had caught Abigail and the 3 girls on Christmas Eve, and driven them off the road, and left them stumbling half-frozen through a blizzard, until they saw the faint last light of a dying fire in the window of a cold, dark house, and knocked, because it was that or die in the snow. And so it was that Abigail Finch, carrying her dead sister's 3 orphaned girls, knocked on the door of Isaac Blackwood, who had lost his own family to a storm exactly like this one, on a Christmas Eve exactly like this one, 3 years before. I do not believe in accidents myself, though I will let you decide about that. But I will say that of all the doors on that mountain, the storm brought those 3 freezing girls to the one man in the world who most needed to be given a child to save. The blizzard blew for 3 days. 3 days that trapped Isaac Blackwood in his own house with a woman and 3 little girls, when Isaac had spent 3 years making sure his house held no one but himself. And in those 3 days, slowly, against his own will, Isaac Blackwood began to thaw. The first night was all rescue. Isaac built the fire up roaring, the fire he had let die on purpose, and between them Isaac and Abigail got the 3 girls warm, rubbing life back into little Bess's frozen hands, wrapping them all in every blanket Isaac owned, spooning warm broth into them until the color came back. Little Bess, the 5-year-old who had stopped shivering, came back from the dangerous edge she had been on, and by midnight she was shivering again, which meant she would live, and Isaac Blackwood felt something in his own chest that he had not felt in 3 years, which was the fierce, plain relief of having kept a child alive. The next morning, the girls woke up, and here is the thing about children. Children do not know your rules. Isaac Blackwood had a rule, an iron rule, that Christmas did not happen in his house. But Hattie and Junie and little Bess did not know Isaac's rule. And children who have just been saved from a blizzard wake up curious and hungry and, being children, full of Christmas, because it was Christmas Day. So little Bess, 5 years old, padded over to Isaac Blackwood where he sat by the fire and climbed right up into his lap as if she had always belonged there, the way small children do before anyone teaches them to be careful. And little Bess asked Isaac if it was Christmas and whether Santa had found them after all. and whether there would be anything at all for Christmas, even though they were in a stranger's house. And Isaac Blackwood, who had sworn off Christmas for 3 years, sat with a small, warm girl in his lap, asking him about Santa Claus, and found that he could not, for the life of him, tell her that Christmas did not happen here. Because that is how the thaw works. It does not come all at once. It comes because a child needs something, and you find you cannot refuse the child, and in the refusing not to, you become, degree by degree, a person again. Isaac fought it, at first. He was gruff with the girls that first Christmas morning, and he kept to himself, and he told Abigail, lo, that he did not keep Christmas, and they would have to forgive him for it, that they were welcome to shelter and food, but that he could not do the rest of it. And Abigail Finch, who was carrying her own grief and recognized the shape of his, did not push him. Abigail only said gently, "You do not have to do anything you cannot do, Mr. Blackwood. We are grateful just to be alive and warm. The girls will understand." But the girls did not understand, because they were children, and slowly, over that snowbound Christmas day, the girls thawed Isaac Blackwood without meaning to, and without knowing they were doing it. Hattie, the eldest, 11 and serious, and trying so hard to be brave for her little sisters, reminded Isaac of nothing so much as a child forced to grow up too fast by grief. And Isaac found he wanted to ease that load off her, wanted her to be allowed to be 11. Junie 8 was full of questions about the ranch and the animals, and Isaac found himself answering them, and then showing her the barn, and then, before he quite knew what was happening, letting her help him feed the stock. And little Bess simply loved Isaac, instantly, and completely, and without reason, the way 5-year-olds do, and followed him everywhere, and held his hand, and Isaac Blackwood, who had held no child's hand in 3 years, found that his heart, which he had frozen solid on purpose, was cracking open, whether he willed it or not. And there was Abigail. Abigail Finch moved through Isaac's cold house those 3 days, and warmed it, not with charm, but with the quiet competence of a woman used to hard things. Abigail cooked with what Isaac had. Abigail mended the girls' torn coats. And in the evenings, when the girls were asleep, Abigail and Isaac would sit by the fire, 2 grieving people, and talk, low, the way you can talk to a stranger about the things you cannot say to anyone who knew you before. It was on the second night that Isaac told Abigail about Mary and Lily. He had not told anyone the whole of it in 3 years, but Abigail had lost her sister and was giving up her sister's children out of love, and Isaac recognized in Abigail a person who understood grief from the inside, and so Isaac found himself telling her about Mary, about Lily who had been 6, about the Christmas Eve storm and the creek crossing, and go on without me. Isaac told Abigail all of it, in the firelight, and Abigail Finch did not try to fix it or soften it or hurry him past it. Abigail just listened, and when Isaac was done, Abigail said, "So that is why the little one's question at the door hit you so hard. Are you Santa Claus? On this night of all nights?" And Isaac said, "On this night of all nights." And the 2 of them sat with that in the quiet, 2 people who knew exactly what the other was carrying. Abigail told Isaac her own load then, about her sister Ruth, and the fever, and the 3 girls left with no one. And about the hardest part, the part that was breaking her heart even as she did it, which was that she was carrying those 3 girls across the mountains to give them away, to hand them to a great aunt she barely knew, because she loved them too much to watch them go hungry through a winter she could not provide for. "I would keep them if I could," Abigail said, and her voice broke for the first time. "God knows I would keep them. They are all I have left of Ruth. But wanting is not the same as being able, and I cannot let them starve to keep them, so I am taking them to someone who can feed them, and it is the right thing, and it is killing me." And Isaac Blackwood, listening, felt something turn over in him, a thought too large and too new to say out loud yet, a thought about a big empty house and 3 girls who needed a home and a woman who did not want to give them up. He did not say it that night, but the thought had been planted, and it would grow. The hardest moment of those 3 days came on the second afternoon. and it came because of a small carved wooden star. Little Bess, exploring the house the way small children do, found a box on a high shelf, and being 5 and curious, she got it down. And inside the box were the things Isaac Blackwood could not throw away and could not look at. Mary's things and Lily's things, and among them a small star carved from wood that Isaac Blackwood had made with his own hands for the top of the Christmas tree. The last Christmas, the Christmas that never happened, because Mary and Lily died on the way home to it. Little Bess did not know any of this. Little Bess just found a pretty wooden star, and she carried it to Isaac Blackwood, delighted, and she said, "Look what I found. Can we put it up? Every Christmas tree needs a star on top. Did you make this? It is the best star I ever saw." And Isaac Blackwood looked at the little carved star in little Bess's hand, the star he had carved for a tree his daughter never got to see. And for a moment, the grief came up in Isaac so hard and so fast that he had to grip the arm of his chair. Abigail saw it happen. Abigail saw Isaac's face go white, and Abigail understood at once what the star must be, and Abigail moved to gently take it from Bess and put it away and spare Isaac the pain of it, but Isaac Blackwood held up his hand and stopped her. Because something was happening in Isaac, in that moment, that had been building for 2 days and now came to its point. Isaac looked at the wooden star in the small girl's hand, the star he had made for Lily's tree. And Isaac heard, somewhere in himself, not Mary's voice and not his own guilty "go on without me," but a different thought entirely. The thought was this: Lily never got her tree. Lily never got her star on top. And here is a little girl, alive, in my house, who found the star and wants to put it up, and I have been sitting in the dark for 3 years, letting Christmas be nothing but the day my Lily died, when I could have let it be, also, the day I have a chance to give some other child the Christmas my own child never got. Isaac Blackwood knelt down in front of little Bess, and his eyes were wet, and Isaac said, in a rough voice, "Yes, I made that star. I made it for a little girl named Lily, who was about your size, and Lily never got to put it on her tree, so I think Lily would like it very much if you put it up instead. What do you say we find a tree and do this properly?" And that was the moment the ice finally broke all the way through. Because Isaac Blackwood, who had refused Christmas for 3 years, went out into the clearing weather with an axe, and cut a small pine, and brought it into the cold house that had held no Christmas in 3 years, and set it up. And the 3 girls decorated it with what they could find, with strings of dried berries and folded paper, and Mary's old ribbons that Isaac took down from the box himself, his hands shaking, and gave to them. And when the tree was trimmed, Isaac Blackwood lifted little Bess up high, the way he had once lifted another little girl, and Bess set the carved wooden star on the very top, and Isaac held her up there and looked at that star on that tree, and 3 years of frozen grief broke and ran out of him in tears he did not try to hide. Abigail Finch came and stood beside Isaac and put her hand on his arm and said nothing, because she knew there was nothing to say, and that the crying was not a thing to be stopped, but a thing to be let run its course, like a thaw, like a river breaking up in spring. And Isaac Blackwood cried for Mary and for Lily and for 3 years of dark Christmases. And then, slowly, the crying changed into something else, into a kind of terrible relief, the relief of a man who has finally set down a weight he has carried so long he forgot it could be set down. "I have been so angry at this day," Isaac said when he could speak. "For 3 years, I made Christmas into nothing but the day I lost them, and I said go on without me, and they went, and they died, and every Christmas since has been me sitting in the dark, punishing myself for it." Isaac looked at the tree, at the star, at the 3 girls. "And then the storm brought me you 4. On this night. And I think, if I am honest, I think Mary would be ashamed of me, sitting in the dark all these years, when there were children out in the cold who needed the light in my window. Mary would have had you all in and warm and fed before I got the door half open. Mary loved Christmas more than anyone I ever knew." And Abigail Finch said, gently, "Then maybe the way to honor her is not to sit in the dark on the day she loved." Maybe it is to keep her light in the window, so the next lost ones find it. And Isaac Blackwood looked at Abigail Finch for a long moment. This woman who understood grief from the inside, who was giving away the children she loved because she loved them, who had walked out of a killing storm carrying 3 girls on Christmas Eve, and Isaac felt the thought he had planted 2 nights before finally push all the way up into the light. That Christmas night, after the girls were asleep under Isaac's blankets with the trimmed tree glowing in the corner, Isaac Blackwood and Abigail Finch sat by the fire, and Isaac said the thing that had been growing in him for 2 days. "You said you are taking the girls to their great-aunt because you cannot feed them through the winter," Isaac said, "because you love them too much to watch them go hungry, so you are giving them up. Have I got that right?" Abigail said that he had. "And if you could feed them," Isaac said, "if there were food enough, and a warm house, and room, you would keep them. You would not give them up at all." Abigail's eyes filled, and she said, "I would keep them and never let them go. They are my Ruth's girls. They are all I have." "But wanting is not the same as being able, Mr. Blackwood." And Isaac Blackwood said, "What if it could be? Being able, I mean." Abigail Finch looked at him, not understanding yet. And Isaac Blackwood, 40 years old, 3 years frozen and newly thawed, made the longest and most important speech of his life. "I have a big house," Isaac said, "bigger than one man needs. I have been rattling around in it alone for 3 years, keeping it cold on purpose, because a warm house full of family was the thing I lost, and I could not bear the ghost of it. I have food enough. I have land and stock and room, more room than I know what to do with. And 2 days ago I had no reason on this earth to want any of it, and tonight I am sitting here with a Christmas tree in my house for the first time in 3 years, and 3 little girls asleep under my roof, and I do not want it to end when the storm clears. I do not want you to take them over that mountain and give them away. I want you to stay." Abigail Finch went very still. "Mr. Blackwood," she said carefully, "you have known us 3 days. You are grieving, and it is Christmas, and the girls have gotten under your skin, and that is a beautiful thing. But you cannot make a decision like this out of 3 snowbound days and a broken heart." And Isaac said, "I have thought of that, and you are right to say it. So I am not asking you to marry me tonight, Abigail, though I will tell you plainly that I think I would like to, in time, when it is not grief and Christmas talking. What I am asking tonight is smaller, and I mean every word of it. Do not take the girls over the mountain. Stay here, all 4 of you, through the winter. Let me feed them. Let me give them a warm house and a chance to be children again. And in the spring, when the snow is gone and your head is clear, and mine is too, we will see what has grown. If it is nothing, I will take you to your great-aunt myself, with the girls fed and rested and no worse for the winter. But I do not think it will be nothing. I think the storm brought you to my door for a reason, and I have spent 3 years too frozen to believe in reasons, and I am done being frozen." Abigail Finch sat by the fire and wept, quietly, because she had walked out of a blizzard carrying 3 girls she thought she had to give away, and here was a man offering her the one thing she wanted most in the world and had believed she could not have, which was to keep them. And Abigail was wise enough to hear that Isaac was not asking for too much too fast. Isaac was asking for a winter. Isaac was asking for a chance. Isaac was asking her to stay and let the thing between them grow at the pace such things should grow, with the girls safe and fed while it did. "Yes," Abigail said at last. "Yes, we will stay the winter. Not because of any promise past that, but because those girls deserve a warm house and a real childhood, and you are offering it with an open hand, and I would be a fool and a poor aunt to carry them over a mountain to strangers when there is a good man here with room in his house and, I think, room in his heart again." And Isaac Blackwood smiled, the first full smile Abigail had seen from him, and it changed his whole grieving face. And Abigail thought that she would very much like to see that smile again, all winter, and maybe past it. Remember the little girl's question at the door, on Christmas Eve, when Bess looked up half-frozen and asked Isaac if he was Santa Claus. Isaac had not answered it then, but sitting by the fire on Christmas night, With the tree glowing and the girls safe, and Abigail saying yes to the winter, Isaac Blackwood thought about that question, and thought that in a way, on that one night, the storm had asked him to be exactly that. Not a saint and not a magic man, just someone whose door opened, and whose fire was warm, and who took the freezing ones in. And Isaac decided that was an answer he could live up to for the rest of his life. Abigail Finch and the three girls stayed the winter in Isaac Blackwood's house, and the house that had been cold and dark for 3 years, filled up with light and noise and the sound of children, and Isaac Blackwood came all the way back to life, degree by degree, the way a frozen field thaws in spring, slow and then all at once. By the time the snow melted off the high country, there was no more talk of the great aunt over the mountain. Isaac Blackwood and Abigail Finch were married that spring, and Isaac adopted Hattie and Junie and little Bess as his own, and the great aunt, when Abigail wrote to explain, was frankly relieved, being elderly and not truly able to raise 3 young girls, and glad the children had found a real home. Hattie got to be 11 again, and then 12, and Isaac made sure the load of grief came off her young shoulders, where it never belonged. Junie became her adopted father's shadow around the ranch, and could rope a calf by the time she was 10. And little Bess, who had asked Isaac at the door if he was Santa Claus, grew up calling Isaac Blackwood Papa, and never knew, until she was much older, that she had thawed a frozen man simply by climbing into his lap and kneading him on a Christmas morning. Remember Lily's wooden star, the one Isaac carved for a tree his daughter never saw? It went on the top of the Blackwood family tree every single Christmas for the rest of Isaac's life, set there by whichever child was small enough to be lifted up to reach. Isaac never stopped grieving Lily, or Mary, and Abigail never asked him to. But the grief and the joy lived in the same house now, the way Isaac had learned they could, and the star belonged to both, to the little girl who never got to place it, and to the little girls who did, year after year. And Isaac Blackwood kept a candle in the window every Christmas Eve for the rest of his days. Every year, on the anniversary of the worst night of his life, Isaac lit a candle and set it in the window that looked out on the mountain road, the way Abigail had told him he might, so that any lost soul out in the storm would see a light and know there was a warm house and an open door. He never said much about why, but the family understood. Mary had loved Christmas more than anyone, and the best way to honor her, Isaac had learned from a widow and 3 orphans on the worst night of the year, was not to sit in the dark on the day she loved. It was to keep her light burning in the window, so the next freezing ones, whoever they were, would find their way to the door and be taken in and be warm.